Which retro video games should you buy? The ones you like, of course. What kind of question is this? Well, here's the thing. For a lot of us, we don't have an infinite amount of money. So when it comes to buying video games at any given time, there are decisions we have to make. For example, there may be some games that you really want, but they're just way too expensive. And so you think, well, I want this game, but I don't want it that much. And on the other hand, maybe the game is expensive, but you think, I really want it so much that for me personally, it is worth it. And so you end up biting the bullet and buying that game even though it's really expensive. And plus, you may just figure, well, the price for this game is expensive, but it seems to only be getting more expensive as time goes on. So I might as well just get it now. Now, what about cheap games? If any game is cheap enough, then it's worth buying, correct? Well, whoa. Hold on a second there, because what's with all that I only buy games that I'm actually going to play talk? Yeah, a lot of collectors break that rule and they break it big time. Sure, they say they follow it, but when push comes to shove, no, a lot of people don't. Now, if you want to buy a whole bunch of games just to have in your collection that you're never going to play and you're okay with that, then fine. But I think it's helpful to be honest with yourself about what you're doing. And don't give yourself these unrealistic expectations of what you're actually going to play. Because then what you're essentially doing is you're just wasting money on these cheap games. Sure, they're cheap, but if you buy a whole bunch of these cheap games and you never play any of them and you don't really care that you even have them, then what's the point? That's basically just wasting money. And that's valuable money that could be going towards the games you actually really want and are going to play. Remember, a lot of us, we don't have infinite money. Maybe some of you watching do, but I know for a fact most of us don't. I always think it's funny when I see these pickup videos and people are talking about how they got all these games for really cheap. And sure, some collectors are very straightforward about, yeah, I'm not going to play this, I'm just glad to have it. And that's cool, I totally understand that. But some people, I feel like they're just fooling themselves when they say they're actually going to play and try out some of these games. Because they'll be like, okay, I got this game for $1, really cheap, right? I got this game for $5. It looks like total crap, but it was only $5, so I bought it. That's a good decision, right? And then, you know, by the end of the video, it's like they spent maybe over $100, maybe more, I don't know. And it's all these games that they're never gonna play anymore. So it's like, yeah, I got all these games for really cheap. Am I ever gonna play or care about any of them? Nope. Bunch of money right down the drain. And sure, there can be a whole lot of gray area for this kind of stuff. For example, say a game you don't necessarily think it's great, but you don't necessarily think it's terrible, or maybe you do think it's terrible, but it has some sort of novelty in some way where it's worth having. I think a game like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker is a great example of that. Some people actually like the game, sure, some people think it's terrible, but it's just such a weird, unique game and such a time capsule that people want to have it for that reason. And so I can understand where people are coming from in certain situations, but here's the big key, and this is the main point that I want to make here, is that you've got to be honest with yourself about what this game is going to mean to your collection. You can't just get wrapped up in the consumerism and the excitement of making the purchase and then later on be like, yeah, why did I buy that? Now it's either just something I need to try to get rid of or sell, or it's money that could have gone towards better things. You gotta be honest with yourself when you're making that purchase so that the game ends up being what it should be for your collection. Next, I want to talk about choosing which format to buy a game in. Now, let's say somebody goes, you know what, I want to buy Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Well, that could mean a whole bunch of different things. Does it mean you want the PSP compilation? Does it mean you want the Wii Virtual Console release, which we actually can't do anymore, at least not officially? Does it mean you want a TurboGrafx 16 Mini or PC Engine Mini perhaps? Or maybe even the original PC Engine CD game? Something that I hear all the time is people explaining why they don't have a game that they like for a particular system. And usually their explanation is something like, yeah, I don't have this game on this console because I can play it this way or that way. Great example, Chrono Trigger on Super Nintendo. A lot of people, when they talk about their Super Nintendo collections, they'll be like, yeah, I don't have Chrono Trigger on Super Nintendo because I have it on Nintendo DS. This happens all the time. When you're going to buy a particular game, you just gotta consider the other different ways you could possibly either own it and or play it. Something that I highly recommend that I bet a lot of you watching already have is a running list of the games that you really want to get. I find this to be helpful in allowing you to curate your collection so that it can end up being what you had in mind from the start. You just put games on there when you think of them and you know that you really want them, and then you cross games off once you finally get them. And you can almost think of this as like a verification process for your collection. It's almost like your list is a bouncer for which games get into your collection. Like, oh, can I buy this game? It's not on the list. It's not good enough to be in my collection. Get out of here. And yeah, some people's lists are going to be a lot longer than other people's lists. That's just the way it goes. Something else I find funny is that a lot of times when you cross a game off your list of the games that you want to get, that game just goes straight onto your other list of your backlog games. So it's like, yep, just move it from this list on to the other one. And while we're talking about backlogs, I want to talk about one of the other costs of video games besides just the monetary cost. And this doesn't get talked about nearly as much, and it's of course your time. When you go to buy a video game, you got to think to yourself, how much do I want to play this game? And realistically, how much will I be able to do that? Now, of course, which types of games you're going to be getting factors into this. If it's a simple pick up and play, maybe more of an arcade type of game, then that's easy. That's not really a huge time commitment because it's a game that's like, yeah, every now and then I could just pick it up and play it for 10 or 15 minutes. But say it's a more longer, perhaps story-driven game, then it's like, oh shoot, I would need to ignore all my friends and family for 3 weeks just to get through this game. Or, you know, don't ignore all your friends and family and instead play it over the course of a longer period of time, say 3 months, but that's up to you. And here we are near the end of the video where hopefully you think I'm less of an idiot than you did at the beginning of the video for asking a question with such a seemingly obvious answer. But either way, I'd love to hear what you all have to say. I always love hearing what your different perspectives are when it comes to this stuff. So be sure to leave those comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah. And he's talking about video games. He's the retro